My name is David Cooper, and I'm 32 years old. I live with my wife Laura and our infant son Ethan in a cozy two-story home in the suburbs of Harrison, New Jersey. Just a few months ago, everything seemed perfect. A great job as an engineer, beautiful wife, and the baby I'd always dreamed of. But in a matter of weeks, my entire world came crashing down. It started with little things: Laura staying out late, being glued to her phone, and growing distant. I tried brushing it off, thinking it was just the stress of being a new mom. But then I found the texts, explicit messages between Laura and our neighbor Mark. My heart shattered into a million pieces. One night, after putting Ethan down for bed, I confronted her. "Laura, we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling. She looked up from her phone, her expression blank. "What is it?" Took a deep breath. "I know about the affair with Mark. How could you do this to our family?" Her eyes widened briefly before narrowing. She trailed off, then straightened her shoulders. "I'm not happy, David. I haven't been for a long time." Those words felt like a punch to the gut. "But, Ethan, our son, doesn't he mean anything to you?" Laura's gaze hardened. "Of course he does, but that doesn't change how I feel." She stood up, grabbing her purse. "I'm going to stay at my sister's for a few days. We'll talk about this later." And just like that, she was gone, leaving me alone with a screaming baby and a heart shattered into a million pieces. The following weeks were a blur of pain and anger. Laura moved out, filing for divorce and seeking custody of Ethan. I could barely function, my mind consumed by the betrayal and the fear of losing my son. It was only when I confided in my neighbor Maggie that I found a glimmer of hope. Turns out her husband Mark was my wife's affair partner, and she was going through the same hell as me. We became each other's support system, vowing to get through this nightmare together. As the divorce proceedings dragged on, Laura grew more distant, barely showing up for visitations. But Maggie was there, every step of the way, helping me care for Ethan and pick up the pieces of my shattered life. In those darkest moments, her kindness and strength gave me the courage to keep going, one day at a time. The divorce was finalized quicker than I expected, though that was small consolation. Laura made it clear she wanted nothing to do with Ethan or me anymore. As much as her abandonment stung, I realized it was better this way, for my son to be surrounded by people who truly loved him. That's when Maggie stepped in with an offer I never could have imagined. One afternoon, as I struggled to soothe the fussy Ethan, she tentatively approached me. "David," she said softly, "I know this is unorthodox, but would you be open to me breastfeeding Ethan?" I blinked, taken aback. "You'd do that? For us?" Maggie gave me a warm smile. "Of course. We're in this together now, remember. Ethan needs that nourishment and comfort, and I have plenty to share." Tears welled up in my eyes as gratitude washed over me. "Thank you. Just thank you." From that day on, Ethan and Maggie's daughter became like siblings, their bond only growing stronger with each passing month. Maggie's kindness and selflessness amazed me daily. "You know, you don't have to do this alone," she told me one evening as we sat on the porch, Ethan dozing peacefully against her chest. "We can raise our kids together, as one family." I smiled at the thought, my heart feeling full for the first time since Laura left. "I'd like that. Ethan adores you already." Maggie reached over, giving my hand a gentle squeeze. "Then it's settled. We've got this, David, no matter what comes our way." Those words became my lifeline over the next few years as Maggie and I forged an unbreakable partnership. We celebrated all the milestones together: first steps, first words, First days of school, my house became a home again, filled with the laughter and chaos that comes with raising kids. Ethan, Daddy, can we get pizza tonight? I chuckled, ruffling his hair. We'll see, buddy. Let me check with Aunt Maggie first. He beamed up at me. Okay, I'll ask her too. Watching him race off, I felt a surge of pride and gratitude. This little boy, my whole world, was thriving because of the incredible woman who had become my best friend and co-parent. We were an unconventional family for sure, but one built on a foundation of love, resilience, and hope for the future. As the years went by, my bond with Maggie only grew stronger. She became my rock, the person I could count on for anything. We made all the big decisions together: schools for the kids, activities, vacations. Our lives were so intertwined that people often mistook us for a married couple. In a way, I suppose we were. We co-parented seamlessly, splitting duties and leaning on each other through every up and down. Ethan and Maggie's daughter were like two peas in a pod, squabbling one minute and giggling the next. More than once, I found myself marveling at the little family we'd built from the ashes of betrayal. One crisp fall evening, Maggie and I sat huddled on the porch after getting the kids to bed. She handed me a mug of hot cider, our fingers brushing. "Can you believe how far we've come?" she murmured, gaze drifting across the yard where Ethan learned to ride his bike. I nodded slowly. Sometimes it still doesn't feel real, like I'll wake up and it'll all be a dream. She gave me a reassuring smile. It's not, David. What we have now, this family, it's more real than anything. My chest tightened with emotion. You're right. I don't know what I'd do without you, Mags. You'll never have to find out. Shifting closer, she rested her head on my shoulder. We're in this together, remember? Forever. In that moment, I knew she meant it with every fiber of her being. This incredible woman had become the other half of my soul, bound to me by a love deeper than any I'd experienced before. She was my best friend, my co-parent, my partner, my family. Those quiet moments between us carried me through the years, the holidays, the birthday parties, the weekends spent hiking or lounging in the backyard. No matter what life threw our way, Maggie and I faced it side by side, an unbreakable team. Sure, there were still struggles, stretches of time when money was tight or the kids drove us up the wall. But we got through it all by lifting each other up, supporting one another wholeheartedly. In my darkest hours, Maggie's light guided me home. As Ethan and her daughter grew older, people stopped asking about their different last names. Because in every way that mattered, we were a family, built on the strongest foundation of all: unconditional love. For years, Maggie and I lived in our own little bubble of happiness with the kids. We were a team, inseparable, facing every challenge head-on. So when the first letter from a lawyer arrived, that blissful peace shattered. "What is it?" Maggie asked, seeing my hands tremble as I read the pages. Swallowed hard. "It's from Laura. She's petitioning for visitation rights with Ethan." Maggie went pale, but she abandoned him. After all this time? I nodded grimly. Looks like she wants to be part of his life again. My mind raced. How could I let this woman who so callously tossed us aside just waltz back in? Ethan was thriving, finally free from the trauma of her betrayal and rejection. To bring her back into the fold now felt like a slap in the face. Maggie must have seen the storm brewing within me. She grasped my hands firmly. "Hey, look at me," she said, voice steady. "We're not going to let this tear our family apart. Okay, whatever happens, we'll get through it, together." I let out a shaky breath, her words providing an anchor. "You're right. We need to fight this. For Ethan." And fight we did. We hired the best family lawyer money could buy. went through mediation, attended court hearing after court hearing. The strain was immense, dredging up painful memories I thought I'd left behind. One night, after a particularly grueling hearing, I broke down in front of Maggie. "I can't do this anymore," I sobbed. "She's going to take him away, I know it." Maggie pulled me close, her embrace a soothing balm. "No, she's not. Do you hear me? We're not going to let that happen." I clung to her, drawing strength from her unwavering conviction. In that moment, she was my lifeline, the only thing keeping me tethered. We ended up in family counseling to help cope with the turmoil. Our therapist, Dr. Richards, provided invaluable guidance. "The most important thing is open communication," she told us one session. "Leave nothing unsaid between you two. That's the key to getting through this intact." Maggie and I took those words to heart. We laid everything on the table. Our fears, our hopes, our unshakable bond. With each conversation, I fell more deeply in love with this woman who had become the other half of my soul. As the legal battle raged on, one question kept surfacing. What if we made it official? I proposed one night as we snuggled on the couch. Adopted each other's kids, became a legal family on paper. Maggie's eyes widened, then crinkled at the corners as she broke into a radiant smile. "I would love that more than anything." With a new sense of purpose, we began the lengthy adoption process. More lawyers, more paperwork, more fees. But this time, it didn't drain us. It invigorated us, bolstering our family ties with each signed document. When the day finally came, we stood before a judge with our children by our sides, hearts soaring as we vowed to love and cherish them unconditionally. Tears streamed down our faces as we exchanged rings, sealing our eternal promise. Laura could throw whatever legal curveballs she wanted. We were a united front now, bound by the most powerful force of all, the love of our family. After the emotional high of our adoption ceremony, Maggie and I were determined to savor every moment of our new reality as a legally bound family. We threw a small backyard party, inviting our closest friends to celebrate the momentous occasion. To David and Maggie, our neighbor Jim raised his beer bottle. "You two are an inspiration to us all," showing that family isn't just about blood, but the people who have your back through thick and thin. Cheers erupted around us as I pulled Maggie close, my heart swelling with pride. Against all odds, we'd emerged stronger than ever, armed with an unbreakable bond that no force could shatter. In the weeks that followed, we settled into our new roles with ease. Simple things like signing permission slips and attending parent-teacher conferences filled me with a sense of rightness. "Look at us," Maggie giggled one night, elbowing me gently as we filled out registration forms for summer camp. "We're awfully domestic these days." I grinned back at her. I wouldn't have it any other way. Of course, Laura's custody case still loomed over us. Our lawyers warned that her demands could escalate now that our adoptions were formalized. But this time, that prospect didn't fill me with dread, just a steely determination to protect our family at all costs. Maggie and I presented a united front at every hearing, unflinching in our stance. We'd been to hell and back. There was no way some bitter ex was going to disrupt the lives we'd so carefully built. One afternoon, after leaving another grueling court session, Maggie took my hand as we walked to the car. "No matter what happens, you know that, right?" Her eyes shone with conviction. "This family, our kids, it's forever." I nodded firmly. "I know, and I'll never stop fighting for us." Squeezing her hand, I marveled at how natural those words felt. This woman, my partner, my best friend, my everything, she was the nexus around which my world revolved. Living up to the vows I'd made to her and our children was the greatest privilege of my life. As the case dragged on, Though the strain began to show, money grew tight from the endless legal fees. The kids picked up on the tension, acting out more than usual. Maggie and I were perpetually exhausted, operating on fumes as we juggled jobs, the household, and court appearances. One night, after putting the kids to bed, I found Maggie curled on the couch, shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. "Hey, hey." I gathered her in my arms. "It's going to be okay." She shook her head, anguish etched across her features. "I'm so tired, David. What if she wins? What if she tries to take them away?" Cradling her face, I met her gaze steadily. "Then we burn that bridge when we come to it. But I promise you, Mags, I will never let our family be torn apart. Not by her, not by anyone." Maggie searched my eyes for a long moment before relaxing into my embrace with a tremulous sigh. We stayed that way for a long time, drawing strength from our unbreakable connection, reminding ourselves that we'd overcome worse and emerged victorious. This was just another obstacle, another test of our resilience. And at the end of the day, our love and commitment to each other and our kids would carry us through, just like it always had before. The day of the final custody hearing, Maggie and I walked into the courthouse hand in hand, our steps confident and unwavering. Whatever happened in that room, we were prepared to face it head-on, without faltering. As we took our seats, Laura swept in wearing an immaculate suit, her expression steely. I felt Maggie tense beside me, and I gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. This woman may have been Ethan's birth mother, but she was a stranger to us now, someone who had willingly thrown away her role in our lives. The proceedings were a blur of legal jargon and testimony. Laura's lawyer painted her as a changed woman, financially stable and ready to step up as a parent again. Our attorney countered with documentation of her absence, how she'd made no efforts to be part of Ethan's life for years. Finally, it was the judge's turn to weigh in. The courtroom fell silent as he cleared his throat. After careful review of the evidence presented, his voice rang out. "I am ruling in favor of Mr. Cooper and Ms. Johnson retaining full custody." A wave of relief crashed over me, leaving me lightheaded. Maggie gripped my arm tightly, her eyes shining with unshed tears of joy and disbelief. The judge's next words were almost an afterthought. "Ms. Thompson's petition for visitation is denied. This court sees no compelling reason to disrupt the stable, loving environment the child has been raised in." Just like that, it was over. Years of turmoil and heartache, laid to rest with a few calculated strokes of the judge's pen. As we walked out of the courthouse, the spring air had never felt so sweet and invigorating. That night, we gathered the kids for a family meeting, determined to guide them through this transition with open communication. "Your mom tried to take me away," Ethan said quietly, lower lip trembling. At 8 years old, he had an wisdom beyond his years after everything we'd been through. I pulled him close, feeling Maggie's steadying presence beside me. "She did, buddy. But your dad and I weren't going to let that happen, okay? We're a family, forever and always." Ethan nodded wordlessly, nestling against my chest as his sister reached over to squeeze his hand. In the days and weeks that followed, profound sense of peace settled over our household. With the custody battle finally behind us, we could focus on being together, cherishing every ordinary moment as the extraordinary gifts they were. Laughter and joy returned to our daily lives as the weight of uncertainty lifted. We went on camping trips, explored new hobbies, watched Ethan and his sister blossom into incredible young people right before our eyes. My admiration for Maggie, the woman who'd walked through fire to preserve our family, only deepened. On our 10th wedding anniversary, I surprised her with a trip to Hawaii, a chance to connect as a couple, to revel in the resilience of the bond we'd forged from the ashes of betrayal. As we watched the sunset over the ocean, feet dug into warm sand, Maggie rested her head on my shoulder. "Can you believe how far we've come?" she murmured. I smiled, brushing my lips across her forehead. "I stopped being surprised by us a long time ago. We can conquer anything, remember?" "Together," Maggie affirmed, tangling her fingers through mine. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming swell of gratitude for this incredible woman by my side, for our beautiful children, for the life we'd built through unwavering commitment and unconditional love. Our path had been long, winding, and strewn with obstacles that would have broken lesser people. But Maggie and I soldiered on, fueled by our dedication to each other and our family, emerging stronger with each seemingly insurmountable challenge we overcame. And as I cradled her close, peering into the infinite horizon ahead, I knew our story was just beginning. No matter what the future held, we'd walk that road together, withstanding every storm, relishing every triumph for as long as our devotion lasted, which is to say, forever. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel, give us a like, share our story, and I'll see you all again very soon.